Hello, amazing people. Thanks for joining me this week on The Ryan Files. Tonight, we explore a theory that sparked both fascination and fear for over a century: the possibility of a hidden celestial object known by many names: Planet X, Nemesis, and the Destroyer. My guest, Marshall Masters, is a former CNN science producer who spent the last 2 decades piecing together this cosmic puzzle, connecting ancient prophecy, modern astronomy, and patterns that many believe are too big to ignore. Now, listen, what you're about to hear is Marshall's research, built over a lifetime of study. Some people would try to shut this down before the conversation even starts. But I believe we live in a time where ideas deserve space and where people like you and me have the right to listen, weigh the evidence, and decide for ourselves. We're not saying this is truth with a capital T, but we are saying it's worth hearing and worth asking why conversations like this get silenced. This is what the Ryan Files is all about. Not fear, but curiosity. Not blind belief, but bold exploration. So buckle up and let's dive deep into the unknown, because this is the Ryan Files. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me this week on the Ryan Files. I'm really excited about this. We have a guest who's a seasoned researcher. He's an author, truth seeker, has spent decades working on investigating into astronomical threats to suppress science, spiritual preparedness. He's a former CNN science field feature producer, veteran of the tech world. And man, I'll tell you what, I'm excited. This is going to be awesome. I've been wanting to find someone to talk to about this subject. Welcome, the one and only Marshall Masters. Thank you so much for coming on the Ryan Files.
Thank you, Ryan. And I have really been looking forward to this.
Awesome, man. So today's subject is we have the background. It's called Nemesis. It's called Planet X, if you will, Nibiru. There's so many other names. Just recently in the news, we've had some new information coming out. It's so funny. 10 years ago, people were talking about this, and you're crazy if you talk about it. Now people are talking about it like it's actually real, might even be known, discovered. So, man, I'm learning something today. I guarantee it. I want to know everything about this that you could possibly shed some light on. So please, let's get kicking on this. Let's talk about Nemesis.
All right. Well, first off, Nemesis is here. Okay. If you get on my site, yowusa.com, look over in the left-hand side, I have the links to my social media. And particularly, you'd want to look for Yowza Observations on Telegram. That's Yowza Chat. And we are posting images nearly every day, captures, and these are all I'm vetting them. I've been doing this now, golly gee, for I started following Nemesis. And Nemesis, when you talk about Nemesis, you were talking really about a mini constellation with a brown dwarf star at the center of it. And then it has three major planets, and in order out, you start with Helion, which is a very large, bright gas planet. And then there's a rocky planet, Arbota. And then after that is Nibiru, which translates to the planet of crossing, and it's the outermost major planet. However, this mini constellation has a whole lot of other things floating around in it. So you have moons and minor planets or asteroids, whatever you want. It's a fur ball. And it was known to the ancients as the destroyer. And the Egyptians describe it in very precise detail in the Colburn Bible, which I publish. And the accounts are stunning. It's not written in these mystical kind of explanations. It's like a man on the street report. And the Egyptians report that this thing scares them so bad that men and women stop having sex. I mean, and we're talking about healthy young people, and anything that's going to stop someone young and healthy from not wanting to have sex, I mean, you got to take notice of that. According to the ancient Egyptians, they recorded five different passages. One is that it was the first major one that they describe is actually the flood tale, and which we call, the flood of Noah. Uh, there are easily over 150 different flood tale accounts around the world in various literature and folklore. In the Colburn Bible, it is the story of Sesuda and Hanok, and it really parallels what you see in the Bible. Back in those days, they didn't have patent laws and copyright laws, and so if something worked, everybody copied it. And at that time, it wasn't my God's greater than your God. It's like, well, if your God is working for you, maybe I ought to add your God to my pantheon of gods. People had a very different look at things, and they also saw the sky very differently. For them, the evening stars were HBO.
Yeah.
Now, for us, our skies with pollution, what we're seeing in the reports, and this is on my Telegram channel, is from other countries. The Iranians are really into this. They're very fascinated with it. The Chinese, they're reporting multiple stun observations. The flood of Noah, or the tale of Sesuda and Hanok from the Colburn Bible, both talk pretty much about the same things, use the same measurements for the ark. However, in the story of Sesuda and Hanok, there are a lot more people involved, and there's a tremendous amount of detail. Now, that was the flood tale was a pole shift event. And the next flyby that's discussed is Exodus. Exodus was a flyby event. This object comes around about every 3,600 lunar years. And if you take the plagues of Exodus and reorder them scientifically, all of a sudden it clicks together like a box of Legos. The first one is, the Nile turned blood red. Well, what explains that is Nemesis has a cloud. We call it the Nemesis cloud. All right. Now, our sun has the Oort cloud. And within the Oort cloud, all right, you have all manner of things and the Kuiper belt. Now, with Nemesis, the difference is Nemesis is a brown dwarf star. And what does that mean? Well, it's small relative to the sun. It's about probably, I'd say, 7 times the size of Jupiter. And when our sun started, it had the critical mass to maintain its nuclear furnace, so to speak, why it is continually burning bright. However, a brown dwarf has enough mass to ignite, but not enough to maintain a fusion. All right. And to continue burning bright. It's more like, charcoal briquettes when, we're going to be this summer, we're going to be barbecuing, and every guy knows you wait for the coals to turn white and bank off, and that's when you slap the steaks on, right?
Right.
And the difference is a brown dwarf banks off like the coals, but over many billions of years. All right. Takes a long time. And a brown dwarf can sustain life. The light of a brown dwarf can sustain life. And this was actually stated by a U.S. government astronomer. If you want to know when our government really knew about it. All right. What you want to do is if you go to my site, yowusa.com, look for my video, Nemesis 2030 Disaster. Actually, if you just use marshallmasters.com, it'll take you straight to that. Now, that video is about 2.5 hours. And I put a lot of information into it, and I'm not, it's not fear porn. I'm not I'm trying to empower people.
Right.
And my reason for doing it is they're misdirecting them to this thing called Planet Nine, which is scientifically just a big load of poo-poo caca. They invented that story because they were crushing the good science reporting of a team of astronomers at the Alma Observatory down in South America. And this is, I think, second largest radio telescope facility in the world. And what they found was what they believed to be a dead or exhausted brown dwarf star with a large planet several times, a rocky planet several times the size of Earth in orbit around it, out in or near the Kuiper Belt region. It's trans-Neptunian objects, as we call them. They're out beyond the orbits of Neptune. And they published a stunning white paper and put it out, and they were doing good science. They were saying to all the other astronomers, hey guys, fire up your scopes. Here's the coordinates. Go see if you can find it. We don't want to be a one-trick pony here. We'd like some confirmation.
Right.
And that's good science. Well, our government slapped that down really hard. And then Caltech came in with this Planet Nine nonsense with this fellow by the name of Brown.
Hmm.
And what they do to astronomers that cross the line, so to speak, is first off, you're going to get fired, or we're going to take away your funding of your entire complex. So these poor guys had to pull their paper at the speed of politics and brought it off. But you still have Google. If you go and you type Planet X or Nibiru, it's going to drive you at Planet Nine, which is their poo poo caca story.
Wow.
Now, I think it was probably some graduate student cooked up this idea, and they were just, they had already achieved a shutdown, but then they had to fill the vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. So they come out with this Planet Nine thing, and it does not have the popular support of astronomers. Nobody's going to stand up and say, oh, yeah, I'm looking for Planet Nine. As a matter of fact, a bunch of Italian astronomers shot holes through the whole Planet Nine thing and saying, you're looking at twice as much sky as you need to. This is absurd. And but still the same, they're using it to deflect because the goal right now, you have people that have been following the topic of Planet X and following my work, and I started this. My first article was January 2002. I started researching Planet X in 2001. And I didn't come to it easily. When I first started Yowza in 1999, I just wanted to do space threats and Earth changes. And people say, how did you get into Planet X? And I say, well, I just walked backwards into it. And that's what it felt like. I put up as I explained in my video, because not only do I want people to understand the real history of this, all right, I'm documenting that not only as an eyewitness to history, but I am a participant in it as well.
Right.
And so I lay it out year by year so you can see exactly how it all came out, how the government did the cover 'em up, what did they know, and when did they know it. Now, this goes back to Pioneer 11, which, as I point out in my video, they were able to determine that there was a perturber out there, all right, way out there, and it was large. And once they did that, they sent out two probes, 10 and 11. 10 was looking in the northern skies, and 11 was looking in the southern skies. 10 was a bust, 11 hit pay dirt. And at that point, they knew there was something.
Hmm.
I first learned about Nemesis when I was a sophomore in high school in the 60s. And I didn't learn about it from Nancy Leader. She came along in 1995 with Zeta Talk. and I don't follow their line of work. But um, I was first intrigued and captivated by Nemesis by my high school science teacher, who talked at length about it. And this was in 1969. We had the moon landing, the Boeing 747 came out, and these things were all magnificent developments, but it was Nemesis theory. Even mainstream media, you'll see in my video an article by the New York Times on Planet X.
Wow.
So if you want to go, who started this conspiracy theory? Well, blame the New York Times.
Wow.
Okay, they started it. I'm just a Johnny come lately to them.
Wow.
And so what happened was our government knew they had to go find this beast and they had to image it. And the thing about a brown dwarf is it's only visible in the spectrum of light that we can see with our eyes, the visible spectrum, when it's well inside the core of our system. And otherwise, when it's way out there, and it was way out in the southern skies at this point, the only way to observe it is with infrared. And in infrared, Nemesis stands out like a sore thumb.
Okay.
So they sent out a satellite called IRAS, and it was an infrared observatory. Now, they did a sky survey with the IRAS. It was very extensive. And if you remember Google Sky, everybody always thought when they went on Google Sky, they were seeing the universe as it was at that very instant, as though Google had a gazillion webcams around the world shooting everything, right? No, they used the Sky Survey from 1983. So when you're using Google Sky, what were you seeing? 1983 with the missing star panels. And the missing star panels where there were just blackness and nothing done happened to be where Nemesis was discovered.
Wow.
All right. And uh, now Google Sky is gone, and I think it's gone because they don't want to have to keep dealing with explaining why the star panels are missing.
Right.
But what happened was IRAS observed it in 1983. Now, the
Wow.
moment it did, all right, the satellite, you have your guidance and you have your data. All right, and both channels are encrypted. Well, what NASA did was, and this really steamed their European partners, the stakeholders, they changed the encryption on the data channel. And
Wow.
they said, well, we have a big boo-boo. You know, that the thing with NASA is every time it gets to be really good, they have a problem. They always have a problem. And oh, gee, we can't show you this because we had this sudden problem. The sudden problem with IRAS was they said that the cooling system for the camera had failed, the cryogenic cooling system. As odd as this may sound, when you're imaging infrared in space, the camera has to be colder than space itself.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's not going to pick it up.
Makes sense.
Well, there was absolutely nothing wrong with the cooling system. But they had eyes on of Nemesis, all right, and they knew it was coming. And what they wanted to do is establish an ephemeris. And with that, they would know where it would be and when it would get there at any one particular time. You can plot its trajectory. And there was, the Europeans really knew what was, they knew there was a cover up. All right. Uh, and they said, well, we just encrypted the data because it's meaningless or whatever, NASA, just come up with something stupid. And because, he who has the gold makes the rules, they got to take it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they did. And this information I got from two whistleblowers. Both of them were in high intelligence. They were non-commissioned officers. You know, you see in the movies where the secrets vaults and there's a guy inside the vault with, chevrons and rockers and all kinds of whatnot all over him. He's been there, seen it and done it, bought the t-shirts. And he's in there, and the officers come up and they say, "I need this," and he checks their clearance and he gives them to them. Well, these guys have the keys to the kingdom, and they're not terribly busy. You don't think it's not like McDonald's where you got a whole bunch of people stacked in the drive-through. And so what they did was, because they had the keys to the kingdom, when they weren't doing something for someone else, they would just start opening vaults, taking out the folders and reading them.
Hmm.
And they had all the first-hand accounts. Now, I had two men who did this. I talk about them in my video as well. And you can see pictures of them. They're real guys. And they both learned about Nemesis the same way. They had the keys to the kingdom, and they were working in the vaults, one here in California and the other in Europe with NATO. And they didn't know each other, but they both corroborated each other's story completely.
Wow.
So what happened was, in 1983, the decision was made by our government to withhold this knowledge. The thing is, the people who are the last to know are the first to die.
Yeah.
And that's because during the pole shift, uh, farming is going to be heavily impacted because of volcanic ash. But you're going to have tsunamis taking out coastlines, earthquakes, volcanoes. It's just going to be a grab bag of whatever. All right.
Right.
And the bottom line is, any man-made structure on the surface of the planet during that time is either going to be uh, damaged in some way, if not completely destroyed.
Yeah. Hey, folks, I hope you're enjoying this episode. What Marshall's about to mention is the Georgia Guidestones, and just to be very clear, yes, they were very real. We talked about them before, especially in episode 48 of the Ryan Files. They have their own Wikipedia page, stood in the open for over 42 years, and were visited by thousands of people, featured in countless documentaries, and yet, somehow, the very words engraved on them have now become, let's just say, algorithm sensitive. So if you notice a cut here or there throughout this episode, that's why. I know, it seems crazy that we need to tiptoe around a public monument, but this is the world we're creating when history gets filtered through algorithms. We're doing our best to follow the rules and still bring you truthful, powerful conversations, even when we have to take the long way around. With that being said, let's get back to Marshall Masters.
Remember Georgia Guidestones? I don't know if you've ever covered
Oh, yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the first law or commandment or whatever it was to keep humanity under 500 million. Glad to see that thing get blown up in 2022. They can't snuff out the people that were following my work over the years. All right, I've been reporting on it since my first article, 2002. But what they're really working on right now is stopping an influx of new people coming into awareness.
Okay.
Because the problem with people coming into awareness is that enough of them do it, then all of a sudden there is consensus. Because once there's consensus, there's action.
Hmm.
And they can't fight with billions of people. And since I put out that video, there's something that has happened that for me is just exciting and inspiring, gives me hope. And that is this decoupling with the CCP. We're cutting the ties with China, bringing the supply chains and the manufacturing back to the United States.
Right.
This is essential if we're going to, we don't have, we've only got a few years left and to do something about it. And by the end of this year, there's going to be so many observations of it, of Nemesis, that it's going to be really impossible for them to keep the lid on it.
All right.
And at that point, what I am hoping is that we're going to, with all of the manufacturing coming back to the US, we can go into a wartime situation. You know, in uh, let's talk about 1941. If on December 1st, 1941, if you published a book, How to Win a Global War on Two Fronts, how many pre-sales would you have had? Not too many. But on January 1 of 1942, it would have been a bestseller. In other words, like comedians tell us, timing is everything,
Yeah.
right? And so in 1942, within the scope of that year, the United States did the unthinkable. We literally turned our manufacturing base away from civilian goods to wartime goods. So companies that were making sewing machines were now making machine guns and ball turrets and whatever was needed for the service. And you know, people think that generals and admirals win wars. They don't.
Hmm.
They win battles. What wins wars in fourth level warfare are factories. Factories win wars.
Hmm.
We were able to defeat the Axis powers, both Japanese and the Italians and the Germans, because we were cranking out airplanes, tanks, guns. Our stuff was, comparable to theirs, sometimes a little better, other times not, but we had volume, and volume is everything.
Right.
People just don't understand it. I do because I've been doing this for so long, and I am the leading independent Nemesis image analyst. And I'm continually evaluating new stuff as it comes in. And what I can see is that, it's growing. And while everyone in America is heavily censored on this, brutally censored, in the rest of the world, I'm seeing it's interesting. It's coming from everywhere in two places where you wouldn't expect it, Iran and China.
Wow.
All right. And the Iranians are really all over this like white on rice. They're really following it. So, what happens now is if we can mobilize the country, we can save a lot of people. Instead of a 5% survival ratio, and that's an honest 5%, we could get that 5% up to 50%.
Hmm.
And 50% is better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. All right. Um, Anything beyond that, with conventional technology, what we know, it's that ship has sailed.
Hmm.
I think in 1983, if they had come out with this and told us we'd have a 90% survival,
Wow.
and we'll never see 90% again. There's some other things that we can do, that unexplored country type of things that might make a difference as well. I discussed that on my video, Nemesis 2030 Disaster. Never give up hope. Never give up hope. And that's what I want people to do it. So I give some really solid ideas about the kind of things we can do with the time that's left to us.
Yeah.
And we're burning the candle at both ends, but we can do a lot. We really can.
Interesting. This is a when we first started, when we were talking earlier on, I said, man, people don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from you. And everything that you just unpacked that's a lot. That's a massive amount. Let me ask you a couple questions here just so we can kind of wrap our head around this. Make sure we're on the same page. Excuse my kitty cat.
Oh, that's a good looking kitty.
Oh, yeah. That's a big
You know
little
why
kitty.
God made kitty cats?
Why is that?
So we could pit lions.
There you go. There you go. I've got four of them, and they are all
Wow.
awesome. But that's the big one. Okay, so let's back up here for a second.
Okay.
So Planet Nine is not what we're
It
talking
doesn't
about.
exist.
Yeah.
It's poo poo caca. It was a spin that they cooked up so that they could paper over this terrible suppression and brutalization of the astronomers at Alma for good science.
Okay. And I mean, when you see this stuff going on, it's not the first time or the last time. I mean, you get into free energy, people who are figuring out ways to pull energy from the ether and all that stuff. You get into that, and guess what? You develop something, it's a pretty good way to die. I don't know that I go out and see a lot of astronomers who are just like, oh man, I'm like a rebel. I'm a rebel astronomer. You know what I mean? Like usually astronomers are just pretty much like into the science, kind of geeky, love the space stuff, love the thought of this, ever expanding universe, wide, whatever, kind of sciencey, kind of geeky. I don't think that they're big rebels who are like, hey, I'm going to stir some stuff up here.
Yeah, it's when you threaten somebody's funding,
Uh,
that definitely gets their attention.
that's a
And that's how they do it. They threaten the funding.
Yeah,
They get a phone call and says, "You stop this right now." Or as far as you're concerned, there's always the exciting world of fast food.
yeah. Now I can tell you firsthand on this particular program that yeah, suppression is a real thing.
These were critical points in the orbit of Nemesis, which is now in our northern skies. At this point, it is past this point of perihelion. It did that late last year. And now it's headed towards its point of aphelion, which is its furthest distance from the sun. This is the danger zone. This is the danger zone. And once it crosses the ecliptic, the plane of our system, that's when the pole shift's going to happen. And it's going to be pretty brutal.
Hmm. Interesting.
And then we're going to have all kinds of other things that are happening. I was starting with the 10 plagues of Exodus. And why did the Nile turn red, blood red? Well, that was because of all the iron oxide dust in the Nemesis cloud. And it's patchy. All right. It doesn't permeate, around it in a complete ball, but it's patchy like clouds.
Right.
And also, there are clouds of micrometeorites. So, one of the things was we're talking about in Revelation, in my book, Revelation and Planet X. I'm explaining Revelation 8, which when I read it, it is scientifically precise. Revelation 8 is just really nailed it. You're talking about the fiery hail. All right. Well, that's some micrometeorite showers. And as I point out, they're going to come, they'll come out of nowhere. Whatever's on the surface is going to have a bad hair day. And then they'll pass, just as quickly. It'll be like a summer rain, comes out of nowhere and then leaves almost as quickly.
Right.
So we're going to have those kind of events. The Earth is already being perturbed. The inner core of our planet is little off center. So Earth's interior is, think of it like you have a dryer or washing machine and the load
Yeah.
gets out of balance and it goes wonka, wonka,
Wonka, wonka.
wonka,
Yeah.
wonka. You know, it's okay, honey, I'll go fix it. And you go down and you redistribute the load and then the machine will work. Well, our core of our planet is like, it's off center, like a dryer, wonka, wonka, wonka. And what's happening is that our north and south poles are flattening a little towards each other, and as the center is bulging out.
Hmm.
And this is we're having this deformation, and we're having other things going on. One of the things that's really difficult is the USGS is data capping. For years now, they have not reported actual earthquake activity. Other sources out there are doing it, but USGS has capped it at, for all earthquakes of all magnitudes, at no more than 10,000.
Hmm. Wow.
Doesn't matter what. And that's not Mother Nature. You put Mother Nature on a chart, it's hills and valleys, like that. Well, it's capped. You can see not to exceed within a certain margin. And so we're not seeing that actual data. There's a suppression of the Nemesis observations that are going on. I've seen a lot of people have been covering Planet X and they're fading away because uh, it's taking the oxygen out of the room. You don't have new people coming into the topic.
Right.
And it's hard to sustain an effort when you can't continue to grow your audience.
Yeah, I totally get that. Let me
I
ask you a
keep,
couple questions. Let me
yeah,
recently, and I believe it's probably related, but there are some really interesting things going on with our sun, the coronal, whatever they call it, the holes that are
right.
basically happening right now, um, in our sun are remarkable. And of course, we're getting at that solar maximum point right now, the 11, 12-year cycle. But and this stuff happens, but it is causing all kinds of massive solar weather, which impacts our troposphere, which impacts our weather, which impacts it does impact there's a lot of theories about this, but from what I understand, it does impact volcanoes and other seismic stuff
Oh,
on the
yes.
earth.
Yes.
So
Yes.
is that in any way, shape, or form also connected with this Nemesis?
Directly.
Yeah.
It's directly connected. It's the battle of the two suns, as I call it.
Yeah.
And our sun is perturbed, but so is our planet. Everything is perturbed. All right. And we knew this back in 2001 when we started looking at all of this. I mean, I have to be honest, everybody was, have you ever heard of Planet X? No,
Yeah.
not interested. But I was interested in weather. All
Wow.
right.
Yeah.
Now, they use the term climate change, which is absurd. Climate change takes thousands of years.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen on you know, geologically, we're in a time that's somewhere between tick and tock. All right. Um, so what happened was we were trying the way we found Nemesis in my research. I had a team, two other people. The three of us are in Mensa, and Mensa is a great association for the socially challenged. So what we were doing is, well, what's this weather thing? What's causing this global warming? Because I had a travel business to Russia in the 90s, and I was going there every year on Aeroflot and taking the polar route between San Francisco and Sheremetyevo and Moscow. And I saw a steady deterioration of our Arctic. It wasn't one, hills and valleys, one up, one down. It was a steady deterioration. The first time I saw the Arctic, it was amazing. I mean, beautiful, white expanses, and then the blue ice. I was fascinated by blue ice, which is very old ice, because I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and the only place you could find blue ice was at 7-Eleven. You filled a cone with some with some ice, and you poured some blue syrup on it, right? That was blue ice.
Yeah.
And so I was just fascinated. I was just glued to the window of an Illusion 62, which is actually a very nice plane to fly on. And uh, I watched a steady deterioration. And after the last winter flight, I just said, I got to figure this out. And that my last flight was in 98, and in 1999 is when I started Yowza. And I was the guy who discovered the Nostradamus Comet of Terror. And that put me on the map with, cumulatively over a period of months, about 5 million hits. And that was in 1998 when it was still dial-up modems. Remember? Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was like slow, slow. Uh, and I was putting up a lot of images, and that got me into it. I did an interview with PAX Television, and I met Brian Marsden of the Smithsonian Institute. And he was the go-to guy if you discovered a new object. He cataloged them. And he helped me with my first Planet X scenario. So I've always, as I point out, I've gone from one divine appointment to the next in pursuing this. And, uh, frankly, I'd much rather be day trading and taking tours. But uh, this is the life that I seem to have, yeah, seem to have chosen for myself.
I gotcha.
And uh, the next interview, it was with PAX TV, and they wanted a decontraps theory explanation to oppose the Chicxulub impact that took out the dinosaurs. And so he helped me, and we did a lot of research on it. And that's where we got the Planet X aspect of it, something passing close enough that it would cause the Deacon traps to erupt. And I did the interview, and it was all wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And they edited the show. They sound bited me. It's called Frankenbiting. And next thing I know, I'm saying, yes, men and dinosaurs walked and lived together.
Wow.
That was the end of it. I probably would have taken a different direction and like a Neil Tyson or something like that in science reporting. And after that, I mean, nobody would answer the phone. Oh, yeah, he's that crazy Christian guy. And I'm not Christian. So, like I said, you never know what throws you into it. And I published, that was my first article. Did Planet X kill the dinosaurs? And I basically put up the research I had done with Marsden at the Smithsonian.
Wow.
And then there was this 2003 flyby hysteria of Nancy Leader, Zeta Talk, and saying that Nibiru was going to come in 2003. And I'm going, this is Zeta hysteria. There's no science to this. And we huge. I got a huge amount of traffic on that. And Zachariah Sitchin reached out to me. Again, I keep meeting more of these interesting people. It's a small community.
Right.
And, you know, I think what I noticed at the end of 2003, and of course it was a non-event, and all interest in Planet X collapsed with Nancy. All right, I mean, we published an article in August of that year said, "Is it time to revisit Planet X?" Not counting us, only four other people read it.
Wow.
So it wasn't looking good. And but that was fine because we were doing the research at that time, and I didn't want the distraction of all the email from people who were just, oh my God, what am I going to do? Do I sell the house? And all that. And it was terrible, terrible. A lot of people, it was a horrible, unnecessary scare event. It was foolish and naive. And but the quiet gave us a chance to look at stuff. And so we went back to our original premise. What is happening with our planet? Why is our weather changing? Why is the Arctic deteriorating? I mean, back at that time, you couldn't, we got cruise ships that are passing through the inside passage. For God's sakes, back then it was impossible.
Yeah.
All right. And we have, icebreaker. Everybody's going up there because they want to get the minerals. So now it's, it's a land grab that's going on. And what we found, we came down to, going, well, is something happening with any of the other planets in our solar system?
It's a good question. Yeah.
Similar things. And so we started looking. Now, Mercury and Venus, they're so cooked, it's really hard to say. Although Venus had new X ray emissions, new radio frequency emissions. But once we started looking at Mars going out, wow, did we find stuff. Even Pluto, all right, had a period of warming. Mars had a period of warming that literally it was shirt sleeve weather.
Wow.
All right. And so this atmospheric perturbation, any body in our solar system that had an atmosphere, no matter how thin, was showing signs of perturbation. And then we're saying, okay, there's something doing it, and this is not necessarily the sun. There's an interloper or a perturber, if you will, that's coming through. And so then the question was, is this interloper, is it a rogue object like a, planet or something like that that is passing through our system? It's literally going so fast that it escapes the gravity well of the sun and just shoots right out the other side. Or is it a captive object? Well, what we determined, it is a captive object. It's in orbit around the sun, and we use something called the Kozai mechanism to determine that. It's used by astronomers. And Nemesis is in a comet-like orbit. It's clockwise versus our counterclockwise. It's steeply inclined to the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the plane of the system. Imagine a dot in the center of the sun, and then you expand a ring from there all the way out to the 12 signs of the zodiac. That's a good way to think of the ecliptic, the plane of our system. And then we didn't need a visual. We were looking for science, and NASA had put up a probe. I think it was something like 2006, 2007. And the data coming in from the probe clearly indicated that the sun was having an electrical interaction with a massive object that was on approximately a 30-degree incline to the ecliptic in the southern skies.
Wow.
So at that point, I knew Nemesis existed just by the solar interaction without even observing it.
Wow.
We later, in 2006, we actually broke the story on the South Pole Telescope, and they built this massive infrared telescope down there. They put up this story about the kind of research that they were going to do, which was more official government poo-poo caca, because they could have done it for about 10 cents on the dollar in South America, over by where the Alma guys are at. Well, what the reason why they did it is that the in Antarctica, the South Pole Station is the most perfect place to observe anything in infrared coming up from the southern skies. And there were a couple of leaks that people got imagery out, and it did show Nemesis plus its major objects.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was from two different sources, which we reported on my site. So one was Nibiru Shock 2012, and the other one was something like DNIR 88 something. And of course, the government body slammed them down real fast and took them out. Uh, but we still, over the years, have been seeing it. I personally saw Nibiru on December 26, 2012, from a very beautiful high definition webcam mounted upon at the top of the Turrialba volcano in Costa Rica by the university there. It was pointed to the west, and the purpose of it was for all of the people in the area to monitor it to see if there was extensive venting at the volcano. And if there's extensive venting, that's it. Get the kids in the car, honey. We're going, right?
Right.
And that's what they're looking for. And I had an expat living on the flanks of the Turrialba volcano. Very rich land, very rich farmland, of course. And he was contacting me and saying, "We got this planet showing up about 15 minutes every day. You got to go
Wow.
take a look at it." And I have to be honest, at first I was in the middle of a lot of interviews. The 2012 stuff was going on. Um, National Geographic, uh, they were pissed at me because they said, well, you know, what does 2012 and Planet X have in common? I said, nothing. It's coincidental. It's like, oh, that's it. We don't want him. He's not going to sell advertising. But it was the day after Christmas and sat down and said, okay, I'm just going to sit and watch, period. Before I would go on a little bit, this, that, and I was dabbling. It didn't work. You got to sit and watch. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, sure enough, just like the guy said, it pops up. It was Nibiru.
Wow.
I didn't know it at the time. I called it bluebonnet because of the color. Now, Nibiru, as we have new observations of it, Nibiru is a water world. It has massive oceans. It's very, it's kind of attractive in that way.
Right.
But at the time, I called it bluebonnet because it reminded me of the bluebonnet flowers in Texas that I really love. And so I assembled a team of people and we started making observations, seven of us. It was really something. The first time we did it, we were on Skype. We had a Skype conference going, and it was like, sure enough, Nibiru pops up, and all of us are going, "Ooh," like that. Like, this is really cool. Now I just call it a frickin' ugly rock because I know what's going to bring. But um, we started tracking it and we were taking huge numbers of observations, all seven of us, and compiling and doing everything. And oh my God, we just had a vast amount of data that we had pulled together. And what we determined, Nibiru is the outermost planet of the mini constellation. And what we were seeing is Nibiru was at its point of aphelion away from Nemesis, its furthest distance from Nemesis. And we were tracking it in its aphelion point, and that's the reason why we were just seeing it for a few minutes every day. And this went on until about early March when there was a major venting event with Turrialba. And after the event, and nothing serious happened, there was a new camera installed, and the Turrialba volcano site had to put up the U.S. State Department seal with a big thank you for this new replacement camera. This camera was a piece of garbage. It was probably sold, it was used for the original Nixon Kennedy debate, right? And not only was it just terrible bad camera, they put a screen mesh over the lens and pointed it at the ground. A very gentle way of saying the party's over.
Wow.
But they were a day late and a dollar short. By that time, we had enough data that we were able to formulate what we call the Turrialba model, which is the orbit of Nemesis around our sun. And we got it right the first time, dead on the money.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I have been tracking that ever since through the years, looking for observations because these objects are popping in. In my last Signs article, Signs 100, I show people actually what the orbits are looking like. bear in mind we got a bunch of volunteers, a lot of common sense, and but we can't afford space toys. So you work with what you got, but we're close enough for government work. And we've been tracking it. They tracked it at South Pole Telescope. Uh, the Vatican has the Lucifer telescope. Here's the thing about that's Mount Graham in southeast Arizona. Mount Graham is in a very unique and brilliant spot for viewing sky. Very beautiful viewing sky. But it's also located so that it is going to be able to make continuous observations of the entire flyby from point of perihelion back to when it's in the southern skies and going away from us. And the reason for that is that they want to know when is it going to come around the next time. What I can tell you is this flyby will be survivable. The one after that, all life on planet Earth will cease to exist.
Wow.
This will be the last survivable, which means we got to get the hell out of here. You
Right.
know, we got to go colonize space. And I see that, I mean, Elon Musk is my hero. I like this guy. Man, this new heavy lift rocket of his, it's twice as powerful as Saturn V, and that's the big monster that got us to the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's gonna, it's Mars or bust. And that's great because uh, the luminosity of the sun is increasing. We're in a Goldilocks zone. And what's going to happen is the Goldilocks zone is going to move past us.
Right.
So it's not passing through us, it's going to pass beyond us. And what will happen is Mars will be the new Goldilocks zone. And we are going to be another Venus. We're going to get toasted. And that's but all of these things, again, it goes back to the Kozai mechanism, which just it explains how you have a rogue object in orbit around a massive object, and it's in an irregular high-speed orbit. It's unstable, and what's going to happen? And Kozai mechanism is simple. Either you're just going to get flipped out into deep space, or you're going to circle the drain. And what's going to happen is it's going to circle the drain. And I think that's what the Vatican's looking for. But in the meantime, I think by the end of this year, it's going to be hard for the suppression to work anymore because so many people are going to be seeing it and they're going to wonder why there's all that suppression if this hasn't been cleaned up and terminated. And I see events unfolding, and I'm feeling very optimistic.
Wow. So you've got deep underground bases. That's something that's hidden, but potentially, you hear all about this Noah's Ark for the wealthy and the elitist and all that. That's might be what they are. You've got NASA, who I don't know that I've ever really trusted a lot of NASA. You've got you know you got the potential maybe even for we're going to make the sun not as bright, meaning you're not going to really be able to see out into space as well, maybe hiding it. You got all these different fringe theories that kind of could possibly come into play in this let's hide this whole Nemesis thing, which that's why this particular, yeah, I'll call it a conspiracy, but just I tend to think there's truth to it. So we'll just call it a conspiracy, just to name it that. But this particular one is so interesting because it almost latches on to every other one, and it kind of makes you wonder if they're all related and real.
They are. Nemesis is what's driving the current politics. And so there's so much downside to the disclosure.
Yeah.
Um,
Not to mention panic.
oh God, yeah. Well, I've developed something. I call it the don't look up syndrome. And what that means is the more real Planet X becomes, the more people really don't want to know.
Yeah.
And that's the truth of it. Right now, I am seeing more observation videos. You go on my Telegram channel, it'll blow you away. All right. We're seeing it. And uh, people are, what the, WTF, WTF, what's that? They're pointing up at the sky. And, but most people are, it's funny. I can remember on YouTube 10 years ago, if I had a tenth of the observations, uh, just a tenth of the observations, the whole world would have been on smoke and fire about it.
Right.
And now, well, out of sight, out of mind. And, they don't want consensus. They don't want billions of people surviving because they are in awareness, they're getting the information, they're forming a consensus, and we're taking action. And so there's reasons to be hopeful. And my hope is that by the end of the year, I wrote a book, Win-Win Survival Handbook. And I am actually in there, I explain how churches, and I was focusing on small independent churches because they're the ones that, it can take them 30 years to build a library, but if there's a disaster within 3 days, they're out there serving their community
Yeah.
and they can mobilize. And so they were my focus audience for that book. And it's how to build concrete domes and put them underground with 5 feet of overcover or more, and where to put them. And this is something that can be done very quickly. And you could take a community that is a farming community producing 10 times its own need with below ground aquaponics and hydroponics. And plus, you can build homes, and these are beautiful homes below ground for 20 families, 20 to 25 families. You could put a community like that together in under 6 months.
Wow.
Then it takes another 3 to 6 months to stabilize your aquaponics systems. So it's a very doable thing. The resources are here. It's all off the shelf technology, and I explain how to do it from soup to nuts. How do you start it? How do you organize it? How do you pull it together? And uh, including the important thing of building alliances. I have a tremendous amount of respect for preppers because they're critical thinkers, and critical thinkers are generally about 20% of a population, and the rest of them are kind of like looking for the low-hanging fruit. But critical thinkers will see, they'll project something into the future and they'll take action on that awareness. They'll do something about it. And preppers fall into that category, but I don't see this as to survive this. If we do it on a plan B basis, it won't work. And for a number of reasons. First off, the problem with plan B is that you're juggling, you got your feet in two canoes and paddling upstream. Your plan A is where you're making a living, or plan B is where you're going to survive not making a living. All right. Well, there's a transition phase. It's like, when do you throw everybody in the car and get the hell out of Dodge? Right.
Right. Right.
And in 2012, I did a lot of consulting for wealthy people building their survival bunkers. They always brought me in at the same time. It was, I think, birds of a feather flock together. A bunch of people knew each other. And they were building very expensive shelters, very expensive, with enough property that they could have a landing strip capable for something like a Cessna Caravan or a Beach Twin.
Wow.
And you know what they were using me for was, they were saying, okay, here's the general area. They'd give me like a zip code or an intersection, something within about 30 miles of where they were. And my evaluation is, how survivable is this area that you have chosen? And I would go through and do a detailed analysis, and I really loved working with them. People who have money are very smart. People who don't have money watch HBO, and people who have money make libraries in their homes and they stock them very well and they read the books and they're very intelligent, they're savvy, and they're right on top of it. And so I would go through all the analysis and everything, and then I would tell them what I knew that they wanted to hear. Booby, it's good. Go close escrow. Get your land and go build it. And did a lot of that. And the interesting thing is, I'm now starting to do it again.
Wow.
And I'm working with very wealthy people, folks that have large acreage. And my strategy is not plan B. Yes, it's concrete domes, but for God's sakes, don't put a cupola on top of your dome so you can have a 50 caliber machine gun. Rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a. This is Cold War thinking. It's outdated, never proven, never proven. My strategy is very simple. Prepare for cooperation, not confrontation. All right. So you have a community and you're growing fresh food. You're farming underground. And you're not doing truck farming where you say, we're going to put in 40 acres of soybeans. You're growing to diet. You're creating a diet where you could actually prepare entire meals from what you're growing. All right.
Yeah.
And you're raising, you have animals, fish, eggs, I mean everything. A beautiful diet. Not only that, you're below ground and raising underground is amazing. You can bring a crop to market or complete it in 25% less time. You'll have a 25% higher yield. And the best part is in terms of the water, you only need 1/10 of the water you would with soil above ground.
Wow.
So you have a community, it's producing 10 times its own need. And actually, a win-win can do many times that. But I just say 10 because that's a standard ratio for family farms to be economically viable, 10 times what you need. So what you're doing initially is you're building your facilities, and you get it operational, and you're selling to market. All right. Particularly, you can what you have is the ability to grow all the ingredients you need to make MREs. So you get dehydrators and freeze dryers and all this kind of industrial equipment. And so you're not schlepping out heavy loads of fresh produce. You're shipping MREs, and there's a massive market for MREs. All right. But then what happens when, you know, uh, all of a sudden things go sideways and we're in deep kimchi? All right. So what do? Do you stop growing? Hell no, you keep growing, but all politics are local. You get out and you start working with your local elected officials, particularly your sheriffs. All right. But your mayors and county supervisors, you're working with them and local charities and food banks. And you are gifting the food. And now people are going to be able to eat and survive that are living around your community. Now you have a lot of people have a vested interest in you not being molested or destroyed. So if somebody has a clever idea to come out and goes Mad Max on you, they're going to have to get through a whole lot of people are going to say, no, that's not happening. That's the reason why I say prepare for cooperation, not confrontation. And in my video and my concept right now, it, I was thinking about churches doing this because churches can mobilize.
Yeah.
All right. And they have an existing chain of command that's respected, and that's really important. And they have a diversity of talent. You go to a house of prayer and you sit there with other people, and you got a plumber on one side, a doctor on another, a lawyer in front of you, and behind you is a grandmother who has an amazing gift for raising and preparing herbal remedies. Okay. Now, there's not going to be a job classified for grandma, but in a survival situation, she's gold. She's worth her weight in beans. And so in a small church, you have all these people and they're a community unto themselves and they pull together. But now what I am seeing is what my hope is, and I'm working towards this right now, is what a concept I call freedom forts. What the concept I developed is okay, build the freedom cities, but surround them with freedom forts, which are win-win communities, but there's a collaboration between the community and the government. So, for a security standpoint, let's say Space Force gets into it. And what I'm saying with the win-wins is that we focus on future space colonization. All right.
Right.
Uh, People, when they're doing prepping, their focus is on the disaster. And they don't really see that much beyond that. They just go, well, if we're surviving, we're clever people, we'll sort it out as we go. You know, it ain't going to work that way. But what I'm saying is instead of preparing for surviving a specific disaster, you prepare for the colonization of space, going off world to other planets, because you're going to have a hard time surviving there initially until you've terraformed the planet. All right. So you're going to have to build underground. You have all these considerations. And my whole freedom fort concept is you're building to colonize off world. You're not going to hit a wall. It's going to be a speed bump. More importantly, it's a way to prove your technology, develop your technique. So you turn the lemon into lemonade, and every dark cloud is a silver lining. We're going to have to survive it, but if we have prepared to survive off world, surviving the pole shift is just an automatic given. And we keep that focus to the future. And that's the concept I'm working on right now, and you know, bringing it out. And I've been, refining it and how to deal with it. We need to be bold again.
Yeah.
I was an 8-year-old lad when Alan Shepard got into his Mercury rocket and blasted off. Personally, I thought he was nuts because that rocket, that Redstone, looked like they went to a junkyard, got a bunch of old water heaters, stacked them up, you know, torched them together, a little bit of duct tape. Okay, there you go, right? The Redstone looked really flimsy to me, but still the same. It was an amazing time because what I remember about America when I was 8 years old is we were Americans.
Yeah. Yeah.
By God, we could do stuff, and we did.
Yeah.
Okay. We were a nation of achievers. It was a magnificent time. We need to bring that back. We need to bring that spirit of courage and can do. That's what the people need. We need to get back to our roots. We need to go, hey, Mars or bust, you know,
Yeah.
and do it. And
Yeah.
I mean, think about this country. You look at the West, I grew up in the West. And the reason why we have Western United States was a bunch of people in the East who had pioneering spirit. They'd sell everything, get a Conestoga wagon. And I think it takes a hell of a lot of guts to spend a whole year looking at the east end of a westbound mule, you know. And they did. And that was it. They
Yeah.
came out and did it. So that's how we do this. We all pull in together and we get her done. We go to ground.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. And I have a son who's in his 30s, and I just I oftentimes will say stuff, just like, man, there are other options out there, other ways of thinking that predominated uh, America prior to just recently, even the last couple decades. And yeah, you know, you ultimately we put our own limitations on ourselves,
That's it. But
you
I'll
know?
tell you, it's we can do it. And it's not going to, it took decades to grind us down.
Yeah.
But as they used to say in World War II, illegitimi non corrubundum. Don't let the bastards grind you down. All right. I think if we can blossom, we will. And we will come back fast. We'll come back strong. And, I am so excited about this decoupling from the CCP because if we're going to do this, if we're going to save our nation and get through this and go to the stars, that's what
Yeah.
we got to keep thinking about. We need to go off world. Right now, Earth is freshness dated. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because that's what the science is showing us. But we imagine a new future for ourselves. Not one of these, it's like you go on Netflix and these Hulu and it's all dystopian. And we're all poor, we're all unhappy, we have nothing, It's all crap and poo-poo. The aliens want to eat our faces off. It's all negative stuff. I think there's a lot of intelligent and benign races that want us to prevail. This is there's an article I put up and I got a video and it was a spacecraft in outside our orbit that projected a beam weapon on what looked to be like a large asteroid to deflect it so it would not be in an Earth crossing orbit. And it's on the site and I break it down. You can see the video and I break it down frame by frame and show you that's actually what happened. There was a huge spacecraft. It's got a large ring, and in the center of it, a massive, like cannon device, a beam projector, and it hit this asteroid. And I actually show you there. There's the you have the debris that's coming out. All right, the ejecta. You have an ejector ring, and I track the ejector ring as it starts, expands, and then starts to dissipate.
Wow.
And that's on my site too. So, what the heck? I think there are races out there that are pulling for us, and then there are the ones that want to eat our faces. But so you go with the guys that are that are trying to help you. And I tend to want to look, I see the glass as half full, not half empty.
I like that. I like that a lot because there's not a lot of that left sometimes, and you see it dying, and you need to be that. I try to be that. I try to be that. Try to people that listen to this podcast always try to have that outlook. So it's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Specifically, your website, your Telegram, your everything, because you've mentioned it a lot throughout this. I want people to be able to go and find these things, stuff you have up there about Nemesis, all of this stuff. I want people to be able to go and see it. So where do they go?
They go to yowza.com. That's YOWUSA.com. And also you can get directly to my video. That's what I really would love to have people go watch my Nemesis 2030 disaster video. It's 2.5 hours. But I did this intentionally so that you could compress 2.5 years of personal study into 2.5 hours.
It's
You're
awesome.
going to know it all. You're going to have it from soup to nuts. You're going to know what matters and what we can do about it. And to get to that video, marshallmasters.com.
Awesome. Well, we talk a lot about prepping on this channel. We talk a lot about literally everything you brought up in some way, shape, or form. It's all connected. It's so funny. We've done stuff about the Guidestones. We've done stuff about uh, particulates in the air. We've done all kinds of things, but it is interesting how this is potentially the thing that the glue or what is gluing everything together. Even in the date of 2030. Marshall, the date of 2030 is coming up again and again and again and again and again from different, completely seemingly unrelated sources, everything is pointing to 2030, 2030, 2030.
Absolutely. And I explained 2030 in precise detail.
Awesome.
The good news is I want you to know it's going to be survivable for the people who get it together and they work with others. This me and mine, and I'm going to do my thing and you got to do that's stupid. We have to pull together as a country from all walks of life, and we're going to fight for our lives and our future. And that's what we have to do. So, YOWUSA.com. Come and see.
It's awesome, man. And thank you so much. I got one more question for you. All right.
Sure.
This will be the big one. Maybe not. So I believe that we are in a world in any time where this stuff has been known by the powers that be. It's infiltrated, the military industrial complex, all of these things. It makes sense that it would all connect to this one thing.
It is the driver.
Yes, the driver, as you say. And I think that's an excellent way of visualizing it. But we are in a very short window until that 2030 mark. There will be an election in the United States for another president in 2028. Will this subject matter be in the public eye? Allegedly only 2 years out. Will there be enough overwhelming evidence that can't be hidden where this will be an issue, a topic of discussion, possibly the survival of large portions of humanity? Could that possibly be something that comes into an election cycle of 2028?
In my video, I have a direct message to the different people in the administration, the cabinet, and about the things that they can do to make a real difference. All right. I explained it's a concept called the great winnowing. And during the winnowing, what the ancients tell us is what is in your heart is going to be amplified tenfold. So if you have fear in your heart, that fear is going to be amplified tenfold, even more. And what will be the outcome of that? You will flicker like an old light bulb, glow bright, be gone. You will die of fright. But if you have love in your heart, all right, that will be amplified tenfold. And for those people who survive the pole shift with love in their heart, it will be transformative.
Wow.
You ask people who have had near-death experiences, and if it's a genuine experience, they'll tell you, one, I lost my fear of death. Two, I know reincarnation is how it works. And three, I came back a better person. I came back to make this a better world than I found it. Find some way to do it. You want to make a difference. I'm not saying you have to be in church and with the prayer beads. A good example of love is a grandmother who pulls a bunch of orphan children together and they all hold hands and she says, okay, let's sing Old MacDonald Had a Farm. That's love. All right. However you get to the love, that's what's important.
Okay. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Man, this has been eye-opening. This is my favorite thing to do on some of these episodes is the ability to, when I go back and edit the episode, it's like watching it for the first time and hearing it in a different way than just being in a conversation. So I'm so excited to get, as soon as we're done, I'm going to start editing this so I can really get my head wrapped around everything. Thank you so much for coming on. I just reached out to you randomly and you got back right away, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ryan. I look forward to seeing it when it comes out and sharing it with my audience as well.
I'll let you know. Thank you so much, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Marshall Master. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a ride. Whether you agree with Marshall or not, one thing is clear. You're not going to hear this on the evening news, at least not today, but you will hear it right here. The truth doesn't always trend, but it still matters. This is not about fear, it's about awareness, and awareness starts right here. Ryan Files is about courage, about asking the questions no one else will, and about listening to voices most people would rather ignore. If this episode challenged you, good. If it inspired you, even better. Drop a comment, smash that like button, and make sure you are subscribed because we are just getting started, my friends. Want early access to new episodes and custom emojis to use during premieres? Become a channel member right here on YouTube and help fuel the mission. Want even more? Head over to patreon.com/The Ryan Files, become an agent, and you'll unlock bonus materials like our episode deep dives, aftermath segments, and exclusive behind-the-scenes content. And don't forget, the headquarters is always theryanfiles.com. Join the mailing list at theryanfiles.com, especially in case we ever stop showing up in your feed. The movement is growing, and it's thanks to people like you. People who care enough to think critically, ask boldly, and prepare wisely. You folks are incredible. Be amazing, be positive, and stay curious out there, my friends. And I'll see you right here next week on The Ryan Files.
Are you not curious?
Preparing to transfer the Ryan files. Now.
I present to you, with great intrigue and wonder, the Ryan